we are moving on, and now we are in our unit 9, where we are looking at program control structures. Specifically in unit 9, we are looking at selection program control structures. This is programming 1. Welcome. In the previous unit, unit number 8, we looked at the basic statements of programming. We are looking at the input statements, output statements, declaration statements, which we can also consider as storage statements. And finally, we looked at assignment statements, which is more linked to processing. And by processing, we mean expressions. So we covered through different types of expressions, starting with the basic expressions, which is assignment expression. But other expressions that we looked at were arithmetic expressions, adding numbers, subtracting numbers, maybe dividing numbers, or maybe using modulus to get a remainder, and even multiplication. Apart from that, we also looked at some other types of expressions, like relational expressions, where we are looking at how we can compare maybe values or things to say maybe this is greater than this is equal to this is less than the other. So these are in the category of relational, or what we call comparison expressions. And we finished off, of course, by looking at logical expressions. So we are looking at if we have one truth and another truth, and we join them using AND, what would be the result? If we have one truth and maybe a false, and we have joined them with AND, or maybe with OR, what would be the result? So we looked at 3 expressions or operators: the AND operator, the OR operator, and the NOT operator. That's it. That can be a summary, right? That we covered in unit 8. Of course, we're also introduced to some basic arithmetic expressions, the shorthand, like how we can increment by 1 using maybe a plus symbol, or how we can decrement. So increment and decrement operators were also covered. We have done so much, right? And we also looked at how we can increment or decrement with more than 1, and we showed you the shorthand for the same. We are not repeating those things. We are not showing you again. We have them in the previous videos. We have them in the previous slides. But what we are saying is we are moving on. And now we are in unit number 9, where we are looking at the program control structures. So program control structures, we are looking at how our program flows. We are going to look into these things in detail, but as the introduction, we are looking at how the program flows. When the program is executing, it will be executing a statement by statement. So it flows from top going down. So if you have 10 lines of code, our program will be executing 1 line at a time, going from the top to down to the very last one. And this top-down execution order will not skip any line by default. But now in this unit, we are trying to show you how we can control the flow. By default, it's just going down without skipping anything. But now we are saying, can we make it behave somehow different? Is it always necessary to execute each and everything? Can we make some decisions to say, we want you to execute this when this happens? That's all about selection program control structures. So in this unit, we are going to look at the introduction. We are looking at the different relational expressions just as a reminder, or just as a revision of what we covered, the same with logical expressions. But our main meat is to look at if statements. We have different if statements there, and also the switch statements. We have looked at the relational expressions. We said we use these things to compare numbers or compare values. And relational expressions are also known as comparison expressions. We have the following as relational expressions or relational operators, those operators that we use in relational expressions. So we've gone through all this and we have used them before probably, but maybe not really. But we are going to be using them more often in this unit. Some of the examples of relational expressions are here. Suppose we have A10, B20, C15, and D20, and we are given these things. If we are given A to be equal to B, we see that A is 10 and B is 20, so this should give us false or 0. B equal to D, B is 20 and D is 20, that should be true. A is not B. A, which is 10, its value is not the same as that in B, that's true. And A is less than C, and C is 15, A is 10, that's true. And D is greater than B, D greater than B, that's false. These are not, there's no number which is greater than the other. B and D are the same. So that's how we can use them. And apart from that, we also looked at logical expressions. And here specifically, for example, we are looking at 3 operators. The and, or, and not. We use logical expressions to evaluate 2 booleans. We have maybe a true and another true value, and we wanted to evaluate if we can put them together using any of these operators, what would be the result. So if we have AND operator, the logical AND, the result will be true if both of them are true. And the logical OR, the result will be true if both of them are true, or at least one of them is true. And the logical operator NOT will negate whatever we have. So if we have false, it will be true. If we have true, it will be false. Of course, we need also to know the precedence. If we have expressions which has got all of them together, what is the precedence? Which one has got highest precedence? So here we are saying the NOT operator has got highest precedence to and of course or in that particular order. So what is selection statement? These are statements that will allow your program to select. Yeah, that's it. We are talking of selection here. So it's a selection statement, so we are talking of selecting. Your program is going to select. And it is going to execute specific sections of the code. So we have maybe 10 lines of code, but your program is not going to execute all 10 lines of code. It's just going to execute probably a portion, maybe 6 lines of code, based on some conditions. So it will be skipping some other sections. That's why we use the selection statement. It's to say, if something is met or is not met, then something should be executed or not executed. So can cause other statements to be executed only under certain conditions. We have mainly 2 types of selection statements, or sometimes we call them branching statements, because it makes our code to branch, to take maybe route A or route B based on some conditions. So 2 types of branching statements or selection statements we have are if statements and switch or case statement. So for the if statements, we are looking at the basic if, or if else, or if else if. Here is a sample block of code. Okay, we call these statements block of code. We've looked at block of code, of course, even in unit number 8. So here is a sample block of code how we present if statements. So in this pseudocode, we are saying if, then we put the logical expression. By logical expression, we can put a Boolean value there, maybe true or false, or we can put something that can be evaluated to true or false. And these are relation expressions. The result of any relation expression is a Boolean. A result of is A greater than B. The answer is true or false. So we can put something like that here. And if that thing that is here evaluates to true, then these statements, statement 1, 2, etc., will be executed. If this, whatever we put here is false, then our program will skip everything and probably continue executing statements that are after the end if. Here we have a flowchart representation of the same. So we might have other statements, of course, but if we have reached a point where we are making a decision, that particular decision will give us two things. It's either it's going to give us true or false. There's a false here missing, but this angle is for the false. So if we have a true, then the statements under true will be executed. If it's false, those statements will be skipped. So we are executing some statements based on some output or outcome of some conditions. So the false will just go straight to false, to stop. But if it evaluated to true, then we can have some statements executed. If we have if else, this is a presentation we can have. So the if else, it means we are now giving it two angles or two branches. Instead of just having if, which can be skipped if something is false, but now we are giving it two branches, two legs, to say if it is true, then the statements here should be executed like statement 1, statement 2 under block 1. But if this expression is false, then we want the part of else to be executed. So it's only one condition that we are providing here. We've just given one expression or one Boolean value here. And based on that particular value, if that value is true, the statements here will be executed. If that value is false, then statements under else will be executed. So from here to here, it's one thing. So it's one thing with multiple blocks, of course. So we have the first block, which is block 1, and another block, which is block 2. But this is considered as one thing. So you can't just write else. Else will always come after if. And you can't just have this one maybe standing somewhere. And of course, when you are writing else, else does not have its own condition. It depends on the condition in the if. So you cannot have brackets here, or you cannot have an expression here to have something else. So the else is just else, then statements. If you have these two branches, we can see them here. So here is our condition. It can evaluate to true or to false. If it's true, we want some statements to be executed under that angle. But if it evaluates to false, we want other statements, a different set of statements to be executed. So whether it will evaluate to true or false, the result will be the same. For example, we may have something that is used to evaluate if somebody is eligible to vote or not. So we may use age. So this can be something that is checking the date of birth. From your date of birth, we are trying to answer a question to say, are you 18 years or older? So if you are 18 years or older, maybe you are 25, so this will be true. Then we can have a statement here to say, you can vote, or we can register you to vote. But if it returns something, or it gives out something that is false, maybe you are 16 years, then it will say, you are not eligible. Or the program should kick you out to say, why coming here? We don't register young people to vote. The children actually to vote, not young people. You are actually a child. And another variant of selection statements is this of if else if. The if else has got two options. It's either you can have option A or option B based on a single condition. So if that condition is true, you can take option A. If that condition is false, you can take option B. While the basic if statement has got only one option, it's either you can execute that particular option or you can skip that option. But now we have if else if. This is used when we have more than two options that we want to actually choose from. And of course, because we have more than two options, we may also have more than one conditions. So we are going to check multiple conditions. If the first condition is true, then the first block of code can be executed. If the first condition is false, we can go to the second condition and evaluate that. If that second condition is found to be true, then things under that condition should be executed. So the if-else-if may also have the else as the last option, but this is optional. You may also have if-else-if without the last statement, which is else. Here we have an example. Here is the first part. We are starting at if, and we have else-if. So we can have so many else-if before we come to else. So the if, we put our Boolean expression or our logical expression that can be evaluated into a Boolean value. And if this is true, then we want this to be done. So here we can have true, then this will be executed. But if this one is false, we want another condition to be checked. So we are checking this condition here. And if this condition is true, then we can execute these things. It means because this was false, we skipped that. But now this one is true, then we are going to execute statements under block 2. If there was any other else-if statement and the first if and the second else-if statement conditions are false, then that other else-if condition would be checked until it finds something that is true, and statements under that will be executed. Or if nothing else is found, then it would go to else and execute the statements here. So the else will only be executed if all the statements above or all the conditions above are false. The first test evaluated to false, the second test evaluated to false, maybe there's another test evaluating to false, another test evaluating to false, and so many other tests evaluating to false. When all tests have failed, then our program will execute statements that appear under else block of code. So that's how we use the if statements. And you may want to come up with your own a flowchart to represent selection statements in the category of if-else-if. I've shown you the if-else, and I've shown you the basic if. So I've left this one for you to come up with a flowchart for if-else-if statement. Okay, so in our next video, let's look at selection statements